Welcome to the Upshot. It is Ulti World's podcast on the latest in the disc golf world. I'm your host today, Josh Mansfield. We're excusing Charlie Eisenhood, who's away on vacation, enjoying some much-needed time off. In the meantime, though, we're going to be holding down the fort, and we have guest host Dan Prentice joining us. Dan is the host of the Drafted podcast and joined us for our fantasy disc golf draft. He's going to be with us for this week. Dan, we're happy to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Josh. This is kind of weird to me. Like I said last time, this is really the only Ulti World show that I genuinely listen to. So I'm feeling like actual pressure right now to kind of hold up the the high expectations of the show.
Well, I think that's very kind of you, but it's a great time here. We get to chat about a tournament. We had our first series, which is real exciting. But first, Dan, I want the listeners to get a chance to know you a little bit. So
sure. What's
your background in disc golf? I know you previously were with Ulti World, I think on the Ultimate side, though. So
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about you.
So sure. So I definitely was an Ultimate player first. Gave up Ultimate playing pretty early and did the Ulti World Ultimate side of things for many years. I mean, I think I was like a senior staff level member for, I want to say 5-6 years in the Ultimate site. Started playing disc golf with my buddies. I played Ultimate for years. My buddies, who none of which could throw a disc nearly as well as I could, all played disc golf and were better than me at it initially. And I was like, this is annoying. I know I can throw discs better than y'all. So that's kind of how I got into disc golf, just being, competitive with my friends. I am better than all of them now. Didn't take me too long to jump past them. And then it was really nice, having, worked on the Ultimate side so long. I wasn't a fan at that point. I was a genuine member of, a pretty professional media, I would say. So it was really nice to be able to be a fan of disc golf. And there were, I got to go to Worlds in 2018 and 2019. Just basically because, Charlie knew I liked disc golf and knew disc golf, and both of those tournaments coincided very closely with Ultimate tournaments that I got to cover right after. So Charlie flew me up for the disc golf tournaments and then also the Ultimate tournaments. So I have technically covered disc golf professionally. If you were listening back then, I was on the live daily updates for that a few times. I covered the FPO division mostly, and did some cool stuff there. So I have technically covered disc golf, but definitely much more of a fan than a true, professional such as yourselves. I do work in a disc golf shop. That is my deeper connection. If I can shout that out, Yeet Street Discs in Morrisville, North Carolina, which is right in the middle of the triangle. Really great shop. We do sell online. Really good selection. So if you're ever in the triangle area, come say hello to me. Or, if you're looking for a new spot to buy discs, that's a good spot to do it.
There we go. Make sure to check it out. And if you have not had the opportunity yet, check out Drafted. It's available wherever you're listening to this podcast. It's genuinely a great show to listen to. I quite enjoy it. So I have one question.
Sure.
I'm sure if you're a listener of the show, you've heard Charlie talking about his time walking onto the fairways of Peoria, Illinois at the 2019 World Championships. Mm-hmm. And I have to ask, did you also just walk onto the fairways in 2019 Worlds?
Yeah, it was too much. It was definitely a different time. I mean, it was pre-pandemic, so it was pre-huge boom, but there were still a lot of people there. And there were a couple times where, even though I was there for media, people didn't know who I was. So I was getting told back it up. Yeah, it was, we were definitely there.
All right.
Me and Charlie holding it down.
I'm glad somebody told you to back it up, because the way Charlie tells it is that he laid down a picnic blanket in the middle of 18's fairway. It's a story we hear often, and so I'm glad I got to harass him about it while he wasn't here.
It wasn't quite like that. I mean, you know Charlie. The dude is always hustling. I don't think he's ever set down a picnic blanket and sat down anywhere,
That's probably true. Well, it's time to get some disc golf. We just got to watch the first tournament of the season, and man, was it great to be back, getting to watch some live disc golf. LVC just happening, and we have Catrina Allen taking down an FPO, beating out Missy Gannon by 4 strokes. Holland Hanley rounding out your podium in third with a strong finish. Final day shooting a 9 down for the hot round. Over on the MPO side, it was Calvin Heimburg taking it down really just in the stretch against Kevin Jones, able to beat Kevin in order to take down the victory. Kevin Jones having a strong start and coming into the final round in the lead, but Calvin able to overtake him. Ezra Aderhold jumps 8 spots to tie for second and round out your podium. So big finish from him. Anthony Barella is the one who led after round 1, but slipped down the leaderboard in the final round. So let's just start over on FPO then, Dan, and kind of break some of the things down there. Catrina Allen led wire to wire in this tournament. It's her 39th Elite Series, and we're going to be referencing some stats throughout this show. These are courtesy of Statmando. They send us some of the most incredible stats post tournaments for us to kind of break this down for all the listeners here. So make sure go give Statmando a follow on social media and give a big thanks to those guys for their stats. A couple of them for Catrina Allen. This is her 5th time winning LVC, 2nd in a row. It's her 39th Elite Series or major win and her 20th wire to wire Elite Series or major win. She was first after round 1 and did not relinquish that lead from that point. However, there were a couple points where it got a little bit dicey in that final round. You had the likes of Ella Hansen, Missy Gannon, both closing within 2 strokes at one point of Catrina Allen, but eventually falling back down a little bit. This also brings her streak of 1st or 2nd place finishes at LVC to 11 years. So real strong performance. She shot 3,000 plus rated rounds, and the only other person to do that last year in the FPO division was Kristen Tatar at Jonesboro. Dan, what are your thoughts there about Catrina Allen's win?
I think the C in LVC stands for Catrina at this point. This just feels like her tournament, doesn't it? I mean, she kind of owns this place. Yes. Very impressive showing from her. I think the most impressive showing, or the most impressive thing about it was she really did not play well at all in the 4th round and still was never really in danger. Like you said, she kind of had that moment when Missy on hole 10 had that 3-stroke swing. And that closed the gap to 2, and Missy was playing much better than Catrina at that point. But Catrina came right back, got a 2-stroke swing back the other way with just an absolutely perfect parked tee shot. I mean, one of the best shots of the round. And Catrina, even when she wasn't playing very well, was putting really well the whole round. And I think that was kind of like what maintained that cushion. To me, it felt like, I missed having Kristen and Paige there. It felt like Catrina, and she played like it, was the only player kind of in that top tier. Like that second tier of players all played pretty well. But there were moments where even Missy as well, she was playing, there were moments where it's like, Kristen Tatar probably would have hit a few more putts to really make it close. And Missy had those chances too. She had that horrible spit out on 2 or 3, I can't remember which. And then down the stretch had 2, that first putt she missed on 15, I think, which is just an inexplicable miss. One of the ugliest putts you'll see from a player as good as Missy is. And then could have a chance another 2-stroke swing, but left the putt short. So maybe things may be more interesting if she makes all of those. But yeah, Catrina just top notch those first 3 rounds, so solid that it didn't really matter that she wasn't nearly at her best in the final round.
Yeah, a couple of stats there for reference. So Catrina, as we mentioned, shoots above 1,000 rated for the first 3 rounds, shoots an abysmal 949 rated final round. So definitely took advantage of that lead. But I mean, there reaches a point also where you have to imagine that Catrina maybe makes some decisions a little bit differently in a world where she doesn't quite have that lead. So maybe it's a little bit higher, but all in all, just not the best final round by any means. But Catrina did have the highest strokes gained putting out of everybody in the field at 11.23. Next after that, Madison Walker, 9.92, Haley King third at 9.42. And both solid on Circle 1 and Circle 2 putting. And this is something we talked a little bit about in the live show, the Rapid Reacts, as well as in the broadcast booth that he talked about frequently, is that it's very clear Catrina is putting in the effort to improve that putting stroke. Because it used to be where you kind of have that pit in your stomach and you're wondering, as Catrina walks up to a Circle 1 putt, that would and otherwise be just kind of a gimme for a lot of players or something you're very confident in, and you'd be really nervous. And that happened a couple times last season for me, but I didn't feel that at all this tournament. No. And even when she did have a miss, I felt very confident that she was going to bounce back, and that proved to be the case. So like you mentioned, very strong putting out of Catrina to get that win.
Yeah, I think she said something really interesting in the interview right after, was that she kind of wished her lead hadn't been as big. Because she kind of had this extra pressure on herself, don't lose because that'll be extremely embarrassing. She's saying she plays a little bit better when it's, maybe a little bit closer. And I feel like a lot of the iconic Catrina moments of the last couple of years have been her coming from behind to overtake a lead. So she did just enough to hold on to that massive lead she built with pretty flawless first 3 rounds. But yeah, the putting, like anytime I felt like she had a chance to maybe miss a putt to let someone else get a little bit closer, she hit a huge one from either edge of circle 1 or circle 2, just really clutch on the putting green all weekend.
Yeah, once she hit hole 11, it really just felt like that was all she wrote. Missy Gannon in second place, a strong showing. I think what's really impressive to me about Missy in this case is the fact that this is not a course that you would traditionally associate with Missy Gannon. She isn't the furthest thrower, right? LVC is a course that rewards those who have that kind of power and distance. But Missy proving once again that it does not matter the course. She has the skills and the overall game that she's able to elevate above that weakness. And when you look around, just go down the leaderboard from there. Catrina Allen is first, right? Holland Hanley tied in third. Hannah fourth. Ella tied for fourth. Haley King sixth. Jessica Wee seventh. Owen Scoggins 8, amazing putter. Jennifer Allen 9, and then Caroline Henderson, who also is very strong on the tee. That's your top 10. Missy and Owen don't belong there based on distance. They are very much, I think, outclassed when you look at a lot of those distance places. But Missy proving that she's just got an all around very complete game that means she can win anywhere.
Yeah, we got to stop sleeping on Missy. I think that's the fact of the matter.
Big money Missy. Holland has a really strong, shoots the hot round 9 under to move herself up into third place. Henna was up near the top for a while and a fine final round at 4 under. But all in all, does fall a little bit short. I think largely, when you go to strokes gained putting, Henna finishes 5th from the bottom at a negative 6.91. You got to have better putting than that. And I wish there was more that we could talk about.
Yeah.
I wish there was more I could say, but she led the field in strokes gained tee to green, and
by a lot.
5th by a lot. Yes. By 3 over Maria Oliva and then 5 strokes over Ella Hansen. So by a mile, but, the putting just very clearly holding her back. Would have been, tied for Catrina if her putting was 0 strokes gained. Completely neutral. She ties for Catrina just based on the statistics. So, what else stands out to you, Dan, a little bit further down the leaderboard or on the podium there?
Man, it just felt like so many people were so close to like a really big finish. Like you mentioned Ella Hansen. She felt like she was there. She also closed the gap on Catrina there early. But she kind of similar, like just had some really just weird, bizarre, missed moments, missed putts that hurt. You mentioned, Owen Scoggins, like finished 5 down on the, yes, she finished top 10, finished 5 down on the weekend, shot 6 down in the final round. She was really nowhere near that mark going into the final round. That Owen Scoggins dog
yes.
Showing that bite in the final round. I was really impressed with, this is like a little self-serving because I have run my fantasy team from a couple weeks ago, but I loved what I saw from Alexis Mondahano. She didn't have like the strongest finish in the world, but she was kind of like in that top 10 pretty much all weekend long. Really like seeing that. It was also cool to see Valerie on the bag for her, which I think was, not relevant to the tournament really, but very encouraging for where she is at physically for when she returns to play.
Sure.
And Kona, I think we have to shout out Kona Montgomery.
Yes.
Who last year, I think, genuinely was one of the stories of the year for all the wrong reasons. She didn't have a special weekend by any means, but just seeing her, be solid. She was kind of flirting with that top 10 for the back half of the weekend, ended up finishing tied for 15th at 1 over for the weekend. But just really nice to see her, especially in a course with so much out of bounds, to like have a solid weekend that she can hopefully build on for the rest of the year, because she definitely is a very skilled and talented player. And I think that the whole division is better when Kona is playing closer to her best.
I completely agree with that on Kona. I was really excited. It was not Kona who we were like, oh, is she at the cut line? Where is she going to make it into next day? That was a question every single week last year. And so for her to be not in the top of the field by any means, but not also at the bottom.
Yeah.
Finishing 29th last year at LVC. And so that was just so nice. Half of where she was last year in the standings, jumping up to 15th is a very encouraging sign for Kona to start this season.
Yeah. What you want to see from Kona more than anything else is just establishing a higher baseline than we've seen. Right. Mm-hmm. So if she can do that, then I think, she can elevate the ceiling after that. But hopefully that does that for her, kind of settles her in this year. So, second year with the new discs. So yeah, hopefully a start for a much stronger 2023 for Kona than last year.
Top 20 every tournament will get her into the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship, which she missed last year. So that's obviously a big upgrade. A couple other stats that I wanted to hit real quick that came from Statmando. Caroline Henderson, this was her first elite major event and the best first elite major start since Heather Young took fourth at the 2019 Idlewild. So an incredible start for Caroline Henderson to get it out here and she earned the most cash at a first FPO Elite Series or major event in the Elite Series era, which is 2003 and later. I remember during the live show chatting with a couple people who were in the chat said that they've got a van or an RV now. Her and her husband are on the road. So I think we're supposed to see more of Caroline Henderson. Others mentioned that she's friends with Holland, is from Texas. And Holland says that she's a real strong player. So, I'm excited about Caroline Henderson. I love seeing new faces pop up on tour like this. And this is really still a part that I think is a dominant feature of disc golf, is watching players whose names you didn't know last season who show up on tour and are competitive in their first season. I don't think this is going to be something we see forever, but we're still in that era. And Ezra Aderhold is the example that comes to mind in MPO a couple of years ago. And you've got Caroline Henderson this year and last year. I mean, Holland Hanley, I think, really surprised a lot of people in her play at some tournaments. And so it's a really cool feature of disc golf that we get to see people like this and stories like hers be featured for her first ever Elite Series major start. So big shout out to Caroline Henderson. Evelina Salonen, though, on the wrong end of the news, misses her first cut ever, and it was only her second ever missed cash last year's Texas States, or since 2015, excuse me. So, man, I think I don't know of another time that a winner in Charlie and I's picks for a tournament missed the cut. That's for like DNF reasons. It's rough. It's rough. It's not what you want to see out of Evelina. No.
And when Charlie made that pick, it was just him continuing his whole off-season storyline of like just wanting to believe. Mm-hmm. But, and listen, I want to believe in Evelina too. When she's playing well, she's so much fun to watch. But the same things that we saw plague her last year were the same things we saw this weekend. Just, putts gained minus 8.37. Just atrocious on the putting green. I will say, if you want to have something to believe in, she was much better in her third round. She was really like at the bottom of the pack going into the final round, but shot a pretty solid final round to make it a little more respectable, and actually kind of flirted with making the cut there a little bit. But
67% C1X in round 3. Yeah.
So if you're grasping at straws and you need something to hang your Evelina hat on, that is it. But it's certainly not the season opening performance you would have hoped if you were the kind of person who thought that, Evelina has like focused this off season for the first time and is really going to work on the putting. You didn't see what I think were hoping to see.
Yeah. So here's my question for you then, Dan, in terms of, Henna and Evelina. Do you see anything out of Henna and Evelina that make you, besides, you mentioned the third round, do you feel more confident about one over the other? Do you think both of them are just going to continue with the putter plague? Is that someone who you would pick to win an Elite Series event at Waco, for example?
I don't think you can pick Evelina until you see the putting. I think you have to be a little more confident in Henna just because, back half of last season, despite the putting not being very good, she still was, finishing at the top of the leaderboard quite a bit. And she still finished at the top of the leaderboard this weekend, despite putting so awfully. So like if she even has just one weekend where the putt is average, you can have a hot weekend. Anyone can have a hot weekend putting. And even if a hot weekend for Henna is, shooting at a very average level, then I think she can win if she does that. So it's still disappointing to see. There was one moment in particular. I can't remember. I think it was round 3 where Henna had it looked like a 5-footer, like 5-10 footer and airballed it. And it's like, man, we're still here. We're still here. And I feel for them. I know it can't be easy for them, but it's tough to watch too. But yeah, I mean, just based on last season's performance and, how much better Hannah is able to finish when she's not putting well, I think you have to have more confidence in her. But I'm not picking either of them to win anytime soon.
Hannah does putt 70% C1X in final round on round 4. So they're encouraging there.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think the mechanical issues that made us difficult to trust them last season are still present, unfortunately, and hope they can work through that. All right, let's jump over to the MPO side. MPO was an exciting tournament, and if you did not watch this tournament, I think live especially, I feel kind of bad because there was some chase card intrigue as well.
Yeah.
And I think just a really, really exciting round on the MPO side. Calvin Heimburg becomes a 2-time LVC winner, able to take it down again over Kevin Jones and Ezra Aderhold taking second. Kevin came into the final round at 26 under par, and Calvin came in at 23 under par. So Kevin's got 3 strokes on Calvin. I think Anthony Barella was a bit closer. Anthony Barella was at 24. But so Kevin comes in with 2 strokes in the final round. And up until hole 11, looks really good. He is through hole 11, 5 down. Calvin is, 4, 5, 6, 7, through hole 11.
Also
Calvin
5 down.
is also 5 down. Yeah. So Kevin is holding this lead over Calvin pretty solidly. And some of the biggest question marks were actually from chase card. The wind is slowly picking up. Terry Miller talks about how it's getting colder on the ground in the broadcast. And Ezra Aderhold's in the clubhouse with an 11 down to put him at 29 under. And so your big question is 29 under, but Kevin Jones is at 31 by hole 11. So he's going into hole 12 and you're like, okay, this is where he starts to outpace. Ezra's fine. You're not worried about Ezra. He just needs to keep playing as he was. Kevin proceeds to then shoot 6 pars in a row and an unfortunate drive. It's a double bogey on the card. The double bogey is because Kevin tries to throw it in and skips it off the top of the basket on his throw-in attempt on 18 to try and salvage the par. So I don't really punish Kevin for a double bogey, but definitely a bogey, right? So 6 pars in a row followed by a bogey performance by throwing OB in what looked like a layup shot in hole 18. Calvin, on the other hand, is able to go 3 down from hole 12 to hole 18 and is able to play 18 incredibly safe. Probably was in position for the birdie if he wanted to, but after KJ throws OB, doesn't really need to. So Calvin's able to kind of walk it in. Go ahead.
Calvin threw first on 18 because he had the more recent birdies, right? So and he had the fortunate break where it looked like he threw OB and somehow stayed inbounds. Miraculously. There were a lot of weird moments like that. Like KJ was the benefactor on that crazy one where the rope kept him in bounds. Yeah. Even Philo had never seen anything like that. If Philo hasn't seen something like that, it's an unusual occurrence.
That's right.
But yeah, so that was kind of a big swing. All of a sudden the pressure was on Kevin and he just, it didn't seem like a very good throw out of the hand on 18, but also the wind just smacked it straight down. It's it
didn't have a chance.
No shot. And it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to see the lead just kind of melt away from him. And it didn't feel like he choked. I think if you see, 3-stroke lead with 8 holes left, he should win that, the vast majority of the time. It didn't feel like he choked. It felt like he shrunk to me.
I love that. The way you put that. He
was throwing great all weekend, all round really. And then it just felt like he got super conservative. I remember someone in the Discord said Kevin played like he had Catrina's lead, which was kind of true, and he didn't. If he I don't know. I think maybe he felt the weight of the last couple of seasons on him of not having won. Because it didn't feel like Calvin caught fire down the stretch. He only shot 3 down over the last 8 holes. That's not nuclear by any means, So it's kind of disappointing to see Kevin. I really was rooting for him to win that one. It would have been such a big win for him. But it was really nice to see him, even though he didn't get the win, it was really nice to see him kind of back at that level, back in contention for a big tournament again, because we haven't seen him there for a little bit.
I think that's a really good way to put it in terms of the shrinking and really playing not to lose, right? Because they go in tied to hole 17, at which point, I mean, I know Kevin's got his game plan, but I think it was someone in the Discord, and I apologize, I can't give credit because I don't remember who it was on the top of my head, but someone in the Discord said when you play not to lose, you give control over to your opponents, and you bank on them not to make a mistake, but you put your fate into your opponent's hands.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened here. And as soon as Kevin makes one mistake, Calvin held Kevin's fate in his hands. And that was it. Because like you mentioned, Calvin throws first on the drive and definitely is playing for birdie. But when Kevin throws OB on his drive and then has to try and throw in and we see the miss, Calvin gets to play for par. He throws an easy upshot that's a layup. And remember last season when there was a tie going into the final hole, Gannon tries to go for the approach and skips long OB. And if Kevin is keeping that pressure, there's a chance that happens. And that's what happened to Gannon. But man, if you're on hole 18 and you're like, okay, I'm betting right now that Calvin Heimburg makes a mistake. That I don't know what the Vegas odds are on that bet there, but I personally don't like them.
Yeah.
A couple of stats that go along with this. Calvin actually has his largest comeback win of his career. His 2-stroke victory is tied for his largest margin of victory through his 8 wins. And it's his first win in regulation since 2020 Jonesboro. Remember in 2021, he tied at the Ledgestone, and then in 2022, he had playoffs at D-Glow and Jonesboro, winning both of those. So gets this, really solid win out of Calvin. But back to Kevin Jones. The conversation with Kevin used to be like that Kevin couldn't hold a lead. This is his 6th blown lead in the final round of elite events. 3 were ties going into the final round, 3 were outright leads. And if you think back to Portland, I think it was 2 years ago, hole 14, the one on the mound, and the weather starts getting a little ugly, and Kevin plays for the layup when everyone else goes for birdie. And then he approaches, and his approach is pretty, like, a little bit off, and he's kind of edge of circle, and then he proceeds to, like, 4-putt, just back and forth, and it stood up and rolled and airballed one of them, and just like the ugliest hole you could have asked for, and Kevin just gone, out of contention. I think that's the year Eagle goes on to win it. It's a storyline that we have talked about with Kevin, and it's something that he is going to have to overcome if he wants to take his place as being a top contender and is a regular conversation around other tournament, in other tournaments upcoming. But as poor as that was, I think it's still really encouraging to see Kevin contending for a win. I did have Kevin on my podium for the MPO side. So
great
props to me for that. Yeah. Thank you. And so I was really excited about that, but definitely I was rooting for KJ as well in that one, but definitely an exciting finish.
I would like to say,
please.
I don't want to make it all about KJ because I think he is, maybe arguably the bigger story, but Calvin, it's a great win for him. Like you said, it's his biggest comeback win ever. My criticism of Calvin, I mean, he's undeniably talented, right? I mean, he's in terms of talent, absolutely in that top tier of players, can win any given weekend. To me, it's like he hasn't had that killer instinct in him that a lot of those other top guys have. And a lot of times you'll see in final rounds when something goes wrong for him, he spirals. Mm-hmm. And something went really wrong for him in the final round. He had just that awful double bogey on the par 4 that should never be a par 4. I mean, it should be a par 3, but because of the stupid hazards, it becomes a par 4.
Hazards all over the place.
and he just completely duffs his upshot to take the double bogey. But he comes right back, doesn't bogey again, has, I think, 6 birdie. He comes right back with the birdie from that point, rights the ship. And while I maintain he didn't shoot lights out down those final 8 holes or so, gave himself a chance. He was, even if Kevin played better, he still would have been right there to put pressure on Kevin those last couple of holes. So big props to Calvin for not letting that one bad moment turn into a couple, which we've seen from him in the past.
And Calvin said in his post-round interview, he's like, I have watched Kevin play that back nine more conservative, and so I knew that was where my opportunity was going to be, and I knew I had to go out and chase it. So props to Calvin, like you said, for that strong play there. A couple other stats I wanted to highlight here, and I think this is probably one of the biggest storylines outside of the Kevin and Calvin storyline. Anthony Barella, who tied for 8th. This was his 8th final round lead card appearance. And in those 8 final round lead card appearances, he has only made the podium once at those events. So not even winning, right? He's at 8 opportunities on lead card that not only has he not won any of them, he finishes on the podium 1 out of those 8 times. Here's another kind of stat to give you that reference. Round 2 and round 4 are played on the Innova course. So same course, shoots a 1079 rated round 2. Scorcher of a round, ties eagle for the 1079. Aaron Gossage also shooting a 1079. So shout out to him. But then in the final round, shoots a 994. Him and Eagle actually matched ratings and scores on those 2 rounds, but almost an 80 point drop from an 85 point drop is what it was. So an 85 point difference between round 2 and round 3. And, I know you can talk about weather and everything, but that is just, wow. Like that is, if you want to talk about who blew up this weekend, it's Anthony Barella, who really fell apart in that final round.
I will say that I think it does on paper fit the narrative of what we expect from Anthony Barella, but it felt a little different to me. Did it feel a little different to you than maybe I'm alone here? He felt snake bit in that final round. He had that moment where he hit the Bushnell spotter that put him in the hazard. And like he got off to a pretty solid start. He's 4 down through 9 with 1 bogey. So 5 birdies through 9, 1 bogey. He's still right around there. He's still right around contention. He has that moment, and it just, from there he had like a couple other bad breaks. It felt like on just a course that just feels like it's set up to give people bad breaks. I mean, this is a bit of an aside, but it was so frustrating seeing people throw like, seemingly perfect upshots, and then it's standing up on a hill and rolling away 30 feet, sometimes out of bounds. And like, it just felt like, I mean, and this is not a pun on his new AB logo that he had on his hat all weekend. He just felt snake bit to me. So it didn't feel like his normal, just complete implosion where he has, an awful blow up hole and then checks out mentally. That isn't what it felt like to me. So that gives me hope for AB. He also, I mean, the heights, like you said, the heights he showed in those first couple rounds, I mean, but it obviously proved to be premature, but Ian and Philo were talking about about him winning the tournament through 2 rounds. That's how well he was playing. So I hope AB is able to flush that kind of unlucky last round and build on his really impressive first 3.
The encouraging sign to me, he's still 80% C1X putting in that final round. That's typically the critique you have of Anthony Barella is his putting. Really strong putting still in the final round. He did go 0 for 6 though in circle 2 putting. And that makes a big difference, right? He hits a couple, converts on a couple of those, and that stretch in the front 9 where he went par, bogey, par, that all of a sudden can become, a very different storyline if he's able to make the circle 2 putts. And so, I see your point. Does it fit the Anthony Barella narrative though? Unfortunately,
it's an easy connection to make, shall we say?
Yes, it is. Paul McBeth had a strong final round, and unfortunately, man, this was a theme. So Catrina Allen, for those of you who didn't watch this weekend, Catrina Allen, hole 10, hits a golf cart that is parked by the green on the out of bounds cart and keeps the disc out of bounds. I don't want to do too much of a kind of evaluation of that golf cart. There were some listeners in the Rapid Reacts. Emily Yale said that she felt like the lead card was on chase card playing way faster, and so just kind of right behind him the entire time and needed a little bit more breathing room. And so that's some of the comments that others made. So I don't want to make too much of an evaluation there. But the one, and then the spotter with Anthony Barella, where if you haven't seen the video, I'm sure just look on Reddit. You'll find it real easy. It hits the spotter's foot and stays in the hazard as a result. And I feel bad for the guy, but you cannot be standing in the landing zone like that. It's just too much of a risk that something, I mean, the wind plays with the disc weird. It does weird things. Don't stand in the landing zone like that. But the one that I think actually is that the most like unexcusable from a tournament standpoint is the Paul McBeth hitting the Goose on 17. So McBeth throws this nice low shot, and the ground had been super skippy all weekend. I mean, those discs were moving, and his disc, I honestly think, was going to be around 25 feet after it got the good skip, right? So it's about to catch edge and literally just smokes this Goose, and the Goose does not move. Like, it's kind of flaps, swings a little bit like, whoa, that's, I wasn't expecting that. And then just kept going about its day. If you're a tournament staff, get a broom, get something, and just like kind of shoo them off the fairway when they're getting ready to throw. I think that is the most avoidable mistake and an incident of like something getting hit that could be planned for, because it's not like they didn't know about the geese on this course. Just before the drive, just run out, shoo the geese off real quick, let them drive, and then keep going about it. Especially in that final round. So let's play the what if game for just a minute. Paul McBeth gets the birdie on 17 because he doesn't hit a Goose. That puts McBeth at 30 under par, and then he has the double bogey on 18, which was very clearly from him trying to make up a couple, like 2 strokes, right? Playing hyper aggressive to try and just get back in there. So imagine a world where he birdies 17 and then birdies 18 as well, or even pars. That's 30 under par, and at least is still very much in the conversation. So that to me means the Goose is actually, I think, the worst of those incidents. And there were a lot of people in the chat in Discord that said this is Aaron Gossage getting his revenge. Goose getting the revenge of Goose. So I think
I have to ask you this, Josh.
Please.
Have you ever interacted with a Canada Goose in person?
I have. I've got.
Because they are, I think, scientifically proven to be the most stubborn animals in the animal kingdom. So you could shoo them, and I think they'd be right back where they want to be by the time Paul is throwing the disc. You might be right. It definitely was unfortunate, and I think more humorous than anything else. I think the other two are a tough look because they're both staff members. And like that's just a tough look, you know. Like it's one thing to blame a fan for being too close or whatever, but when it's people who are there to run the tournament, that's a tough look.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely needed to not be standing there. I feel like the Goose was so avoidable. And you're right. Like my grandma used to have a pair of Canadian geese, and man, they were mean too. But
yeah, they are mean. There are a lot of them in Florida, and there would be lots of times where they would just completely stop traffic, like a 6-lane, major motorway, just taking their sweet time crossing the street. They're a stubborn animal. They really do not give a single care in the world about what human beings may want them to do.
So someone who watches golf more than I do would need to tell me this, but like I'm just imagining a Goose like sitting on like right in the green or in the way at a PGA tournament, and like I don't know, maybe it happens. Someone correct me if I'm wrong.
I feel like it does happen.
I think it might. Yeah, you might be right. So maybe this is just something golf lives with.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate though, because I think this Goose legitimately influenced tournament outcome.
Potentially, yeah.
Right? Paul with a birdie there is just a whole nother deal in how they think about that final hole as well. So
yeah.
Definitely unfortunate with the obstacles though on the weekend. Get rid of the geese, man. Get rid of the geese. But let's see. Anything else from Stat Moundo that we want to hit? Eagle McMahon also had a strong weekend getting on the lead card, but then he has not carded more than 2 bogeys in a row since before 2021, and he carded 4 in a row in round 4. He also had carded a similar sub 1,000 rated round in round 4 of 2022 LVC, dropping from the lead card to 21st place. 4th round for Eagle McMahon just is not the place to be at LVC. But all in all, I didn't see. Here's the other stat that I'm going to say anyone who's panicking about Eagle is unnecessarily panicking, because Eagle's average percentage in putting when he won tournaments was 92% C1X and 37% Circle 2. This comes from Disc Golf Doug. I think he clipped it from somewhere, but I'm not sure. He's the one who gave it to me. So he's getting the credit this time. This weekend, though, his Circle 1 percentage, 84%. His Circle 2 percentage, 12%. So not anywhere close to his averages where he usually is when he wins. I don't think this is injury concerns. I think Eagle looked pretty good overall. Threw a little bit on forehand, but not a lot. But all in all, I don't think Eagle is the one we need to worry about this season, injury-wise. At least thus far, right? Like nothing at LVC made me say, "Yup, Eagle's going to have another injury-ridden season."
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there weren't any signs that I saw that it was a physical thing. Could just be rust, like that's pretty easy to chalk it up to as well. Yeah, I think it's going to be natural to worry when you see even if it's not an injury thing, it's like, is there a fatigue issue where when he gets to the back half of the fourth round of a tournament, he just doesn't have the same juice that we're used to Eagle having. But at the end of the day, I know we want to extrapolate all these, long-term ideas out of it. And I know we will later in the show.
We are.
It's like, if the Eagle had this last round as the third round of the fourth tournament of the season, would anyone think anything of it?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Let's wait. Before we panic. I don't think we should hit the panic button on anyone, even the players that seemingly had the same issues that we saw last year. It's a long season. We're just starting. So yeah, if Eagle had been holding his arm or something, after a lot of shots, I think that's a cause for concern. But I think he just kind of, wasn't his round really.
Not quite panic button, but the closest, my fingers are dancing on the panic button a little bit for Simon Lizotte. So Simon makes the cut and then in the final round drops 28 places down to 47th. He shoots a +3, 7 OB throws on the round, and had been saying that his elbow has been hurting him, that he threw too many hard shots at All-Stars, and that it had been bugging him at LVC. We know that Simon has that injury with the elbow injury that caused him so much grief for the past couple of years, and we were so excited to see him back. I'm worried now if, number one, did he re-injure it seriously? Is this going to be a question of, is he out for an extended period of time due to this injury? And then number two is, last season he proved to us that he is able to still compete at the top level despite his, limitations and choosing not to throw like he used to throw because he was doing injury management. I'm wondering, does that baseline of where his injury management is, does that decrease? Because Salmon's not getting any younger. Does that level decrease, and does that limit his ceiling in a way that maybe wasn't the case last season, but maybe we should be worried about next season even? Those are the two concerns I've got about Simon right now, given this injury. It sounds like injury problem that he took second to last after the cut. So he makes the cut, and then Bradley Williams is the only one to finish worse than Simon, and Simon dropped 28 places in that final round. Yeah,
that is a concern just because of the health priors there. Mm-hmm. It was such a yo-yo weekend for him because he had that fantastic first round, and it was it had to have been really buoying for Simon fans who maybe had reservations about the bag switch, especially
the MVP fan pages were very bullish on Simon after that round.
I'm sure they were. I really hope it was just a one-off thing. I didn't see any of the elbow stuff that I saw other people talking about. Hopefully it's minor, because that is a worry with the player who's had so many injury issues. And tendon stuff just from other sports just seems like it can flare up at any time.
Yes.
So I really hope that's not the case for Simon. But yeah, I think that is different than a player having an off round. If a player with injury history, and a pretty extensive injury history at that, shows signs of that maybe flaring up again, that is something to be worried about. Hopefully Simon's fine and can chalk this bad round up to just, I don't know, just having an off day, or maybe preemptively feeling some tightness there or something. Because we definitely want Simon at his best out there.
Absolutely. What did you think of the broadcast overall? I mean, we've talked a lot about the golf, and if there are any other questions, we had the opportunity to talk a lot about it in our Rapid Reacts. You can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month, ultiworld.com/subscribe. So make sure to go check that out. But overall, what about the broadcast there? What did you want to, thoughts or comments that you wanted to make on that?
Sure. So this was the first year, right, that they put the paywall, or the fourth round behind the paywall. So I really was pretty much last year. I think I only watched the final rounds of stuff. Like I would follow on UDisc, watch the final round because I didn't pay for the subscription. So I was really curious to see, what kind of upgrades they would get now that they're like making it a lot harder for people to watch the most important round of play. The first thing for me is I think they got to get someone, like they got to stop asking Ian to do both. I think they have to. I think his energy leaves a little bit desired. And I think that's kind of like who he is as a broadcaster in a way. He's just, kind of like a low key guy, but it's just a lot. It's like so much to ask. Like if you watch a professional golf broadcast, they have, I don't know, probably like 6 at least different broadcast teams for one course for, one round. They're asking Ian to do all 18 holes for multiple cards for 2 different fields. And that I think is just too much. I was aggravated that there's still the audio delay. It felt better to me than it has in years past. I didn't think it was as extreme, but there definitely were still moments that I cannot understand why they make that choice. Like at this point, it's very clear that they're like choosing to delay audio. And I'm appreciative that it's better than it's been. But still just a bizarre choice to me. I thought a lot of people loved this. The drone stuff was really cool. I liked that a lot, especially on that course. And I don't think you'll be able to use that to the same extent on, a lot of different courses we'll see this season, but made really good use of at LVC. I thought there were a lot of commercials, Josh, for like, there's always gonna be commercials, right? And I want there to be commercials to fill dead time, but it felt like we missed some moments, which I think is inexcusable for a broadcast platform that is, pay per view. Other than that, I thought it was pretty good. I think those were like my big takeaways. What about you? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got 2 things I want to add to that. Number one, I think there reaches a point where at the end of the broadcast, especially, a focus on like the lead card and this, like the focus needs to be really on like Kevin and Calvin on the last 3 holes. And I know you got to show Paul McBeth real quick and do that, but like, I want the cleanest storyline. If there's a battle on lead card, even if there's chase card, like you need to capture that chase card and who's playing well and make sure to get those on there real quick and mention it. But if you cut back and forth too often, and especially for shots that as they become less important, I worry that you detract a little bit from the drama that you could really get from focusing on the final lead card. But I guess I think the one argument against that is like, there was a good chance that Paul or Drew ended up in a playoff in this event. And so that's a little bit of a difficult balance that I don't envy the producer having to make. But I really like when there's that tight and you can feel the tension on the lead card, that I think is a little bit lost when the tension is spread between cards in the broadcast.
Give me more body language shots of Calvin and Kevin, like between throws. You don't need to show like every shot live. You know what I mean? Like if Paul has a meaningful shot, you can always show that like when you get a break to, or same with Drew. You don't have to cut to them for every single live shot down the stretch. I agree. I did have that thought as well. It felt a little cluttered down the stretch where maybe a little bit too much cutting, not enough color, not enough picture setting, shall we say. Yeah.
And the second thing though, they gave us the graphics I wanted. I talked about this all off season. It's all I wanted was an overhead shot with pins where discs ended up. Look, they used Google Maps. I don't think they're the nicest graphics. I'm not going to say they're going to win an award for like the quality of those graphics. And I don't care. I was thrilled because it gave such meaningful and relevant information that just was so desperately lacking. And I think it elevated the level of this broadcast significantly, in my opinion, when they use that graphic. I want to see more of it. Keep using it regularly. And I want to see the whole preview, and I want Ian to draw circles and say, this is your landing zone. Right here is where you want to see their discs. And then after they throw, to put the pins up and be like, remember that landing zone? Only these two are in it. Let's see how it plays out. And that's just a meaningful way to talk about the before, the during, and the after, and connect the whole. But it's all right. I got what I wanted. I'm very thrilled.
Small steps.
And I will be patient for the continuation of graphics. So thank you to DGN for that broadcast. So that's our LVC initial breakdown. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's one of my favorite shows. It's LVC Overreactions. We're going to talk about some of our biggest overreactions for the rest of the season. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to The Upshot.
At Pound, the quality of our gear runs deeper than the stitching. That's why we make everything right here in the US, employing highly skilled, well-paid professionals. From bomb-proof Cordura fabric to YKK zippers and recycled plastics, we source the highest quality US materials to make the most comfortable, durable pack in disc golf. Our lifetime warranty stays with the pack, not the purchaser. So regardless of how you find us, we will be here to make sure your pack stays on the course and out of the landfill. Pound's integrity is held together with more than just thread.
Welcome back to The Upshot. So, background for this segment. My favorite sports app is The Score. I think I've mentioned that before, and I use it for all my sports. I get to track my favorite teams, and I think The Score's staff writers are actually really good. And my favorite part about them is they have some of the funnest and most engaging power rankings for all the leagues. But my favorite power ranking of any sport league is the MLB first week power rankings that they call their wild overreactions. Now, MLB just incredibly long season and the length of games and the amount of time. And so deriving anything from the first week of the MLB season is very difficult. But they do it anyway, and it's so much fun to go back and read those later. So we're going to do our overreactions based on just LVC. They're meant to be outlandish, they're meant to be crazy, and they give us an opportunity to really kind of break down some of the things that I think are going to be important to watch this season. So Dan, I'll go first. I'm going to say Kevin Jones is going to win 2 Elite Series events or majors this season. I don't think Kevin's had 2 in a season before. I know he's won before, but I think he's going to multi-win. He looked really good. And if he can just, in that final round, change up that game plan to play a little bit stronger down the stretch, I don't see any reason why Kevin can't dig down a couple of wins this season.
Yeah, he looks great through 3.5 rounds. I mean, he looks like a tournament winner through 3.5 rounds. I think the worry is that, you know, with the mental stuff we see from Kevin before, that he doesn't take this loss well, and that we see it carry over into future performances. But yeah, I hope that he is buoyed by it, that he was there for the first time in a while and played well enough for such a long stretch. You know, if you play well for 3.5 rounds, a lot of Elite Series events going to be a win because you've played an extra half round that you didn't need to play well.
That is true. That's true.
So yeah, I wouldn't pick him to win 2. I would not be shocked at all if he won 1, though. I mean, I thought he looked really, really back at his best, which was really nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Dan.
Okay. This is basically a direct at Charlie Eisenhood, the usual host of this show. Evelina Salonen will not be any better on the putting green than she was last year.
I cannot wait for Charlie to listen to this show and just like I love how just direct we're calling him out. So for reference, let's pull these real fast. Last season, we'll sort by there we go. I sorted last season stats by fairway hits in order to get Evelina at the top. Circle 1X percentage, 52%. 8% circle 2 putting. She was worse this weekend than her season average last year. But anyway, that's the reference.
And that's a hard mark to beat.
Yeah. In the wrong direction. Yeah.
Yes.
We saw one round of encouraging putting, but, and I think coming over to the US for the first tournament, there's a lot of reasons why I think this is an overreaction, but there are also a lot of reasons to think that like putting a lot of stock in Evelina's putter right now probably is not the best choice. So I like
you can get it real cheap.
I can't.
That's the only thing that you can really say about it at this point, I think.
That is true. All right. I have not been as bullish about this player as some others. I think she's very good. But after this weekend, I say Holland Hanley is going to win a major this season. Holland's not yet won an Elite Series. So I'm picking Holland to pull the Gannon Buhr, where her first Elite Series win is also a major. She shoots the hot round this weekend on the final round at 9 under, slides herself into third. And I mean, we're seeing the level of improvement. There are some people in the Discord who say that Holland has the highest ceiling of any FPO player on the course. And it's just about her accessing and really harnessing that ceiling. So I've got her to win a major this season.
Josh, do you know who led FPO in birdies at LVC this weekend?
Was it Holland Hanley?
It was Holland Hanley, yeah.
Hey!
Yeah, 4% higher birdie rate than Catrina did. The problem was she had 3 double bogeys. So that was why she ended up finishing quite a few strokes behind Cat in the end. Josh, this is the part for outlandish predictions, right?
Yeah, yes,
I want you to take it a step further. Which major does Holland Hanley win this year? Call your shot.
All right, I'll call my shot. I'll call it. I don't think U.S. Women's. I don't know enough about U.S. Women's to select that one, so I'm not going to pick that one. I don't think she wins Champions Cup. I think that mitigates the distance advantage a little bit. I'm trying to remember how well tuned GMC is for the FPO. I think distance is big, but not everything. I wonder, I'm going to have to check. I'll look right now if she's registered for European Open, but my pick really is either throw pink. That's kind of where my first gut reaction says. But I want to see where, if she's registered for European Open, because remember, European Open, at least in previous years, has played the same layout as the MPO. And so someone like Holland, who just, crushes a mile, is really going to, have an advantage there that will keep her up at the top. Does that give too much benefits to, let's see. All right. European Open. I do not see European Open on here. So I'm going to say throw pink women's championship. That's okay. It's not, man, it's a major. We call it a major on this show.
Yeah. It feels like one.
It does. Yeah. So I'm saying throw pink women's championship is the one that Holland wins, but man, that makes this prediction a lot harder.
I'll give you double points though if you get it right.
Okay, all right, I'll take those. All right, Dan, what's your next overreaction?
Simon Lizotte will not win a single tournament this year.
Wow. You need to barricade your door. The MVP fans are coming for you this year.
Yeah. Listen, I know firsthand from working at a disc golf shop, the MVP fans were a little rabid before Simon became an MVP player. So, man, this one's a hot take. So you're saying he goes from 4 wins last season to not getting a single one this season? Yeah.
Is it injury? Is that like? Are you that sure of his injury?
To be honest, this came out in the fantasy draft. I was already pretty bearish on Simon compared to most.
That's true. Yeah, I remember that.
I still think his listen, 4 wins is very impressive, and I don't think you can fluke your way to 4 wins. But I think that level of performance is a little fluky for Simon where he is in his career. The last round definitely has me worried. I definitely am concerned about the health if he misses a big chunk of the season. This is the thing. If he is hurt, either he keeps playing and stays within himself and maybe has like a long-term build up over time injury, or he pushes it and then hurts himself worse. Okay. Either way, I think it dramatically could potentially really hurt his stealing for what his season can be. So I listen. I know this is a hot take.
This is a hot take,
but yeah, I was bearish on Simon already, and then the way he finished this weekend did nothing to alleviate that for me.
All right, okay, there it is. That one definitely a hot take. All right, I'm going to say this feels very much like the most in spirit to me based on this weekend's results. I'm going to say Calvin wins Player of the Year. Now, with that, I think for those who follow our Player of the Year determinations, this means that Calvin has to win a major as well. Because I don't think, well, I guess Ricky did it without a major, but
feels unlikely.
It's very difficult to do without winning a major, right? So I think Calvin wins Player of the Year and does it with his major, with his first major. I think first major.
Mm-hmm.
He looked good this weekend. He runs down the comeback win, the margin of victory in his win. All of those things are not the kind of wins that you typically see out of Calvin. And I know we've talked about Calvin playing better from a lead than from behind. And so it's really good to see Calvin. It really is like the killer instinct a little bit that you talked about that you feel like he's missing. I think he showed it better this weekend. And I'm going to say Calvin wins Player of the Year.
I love that. I will say, yes, it's like, it's the overreaction is that you're saying that because of this weekend. Right? Like, that is the overreaction. Because Calvin won this weekend, he can win Player of the Year. But if you told me that before this weekend, I don't think it, like, it's definitely, he's not the favorite. But it's certainly within the plausible range of outcomes for Calvin. I said earlier, he is as talented as any player in the field. And if he shows a little bit more of that killer instinct where, one mess up in the final round doesn't throw his whole round off, or he's able to chase down players that have a lead on him, that does take his game to another level. And I think the only other level that you really can see from Calvin is being a Player of the Year type year. So I like this overreaction a lot, Josh.
Thank you. All right, what's up next for you?
Ella Hansen wins an Elite Series event for the first time.
Okay. I'm going to push you just a little bit on this one because Ella Hansen has several podium finishes and second place finishes. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you, does Ella Hansen win an Elite Series before Holland Handley?
Ooh. I don't know why we keep lumping these two players together, but it just feels right, doesn't it?
It does.
They're both like these athletic big throwers that are pretty new to the sport. Mm-hmm. That's tough, man. I mean, that
come on. If you're going to take the overreaction, you got to take it.
Okay, yeah. If it has to be an overreaction, then she wins it. She wins it before Holland does. We saw glimpses of her this week, but we also saw some of the glimpses of like why she hasn't been able to win, which is just kind of inexplicably missing, like getting tight on putts and missing them for absolutely no reason. But if I think she's shown now that if she just has one weekend where she gets hot with the putter or just eliminates a few of those errors, she's going to be right there, probably multiple times this season, especially, when it gets to some Ella-friendly courses. So, listen, I am very much rooting for her. I love Ella. The first disc golf round she ever played was with me and Charlie. I don't know if Charlie's ever said that on the show.
I don't know if he did say that.
Yeah. So, it was covering an ultimate tournament. We picked up Ella. Ella was there. We dragged Ella along. She played for the first time, and that was basically what launched Ella's disc golf career. So you're welcome, everyone. Ulti World played a part in that. Yeah, that's my true disc golf claim to fame. But yeah, I think she can do it this year. I really think she can.
So correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Ella's biggest issue is that she is coming from a sport that does not have the type of pressure that can replicate the putting pressure in a individual solo sport. And the reason I say that, and you're an ultimate player. I have never played competitive ultimate of any kind, a little bit casual, but I come from hockey and I played goalie in hockey, and even like a staring down a breakaway 1v1 kind of style, I never feel the same kind of pressure in putting that I ever did in hockey. Like just, they're two different pressures because it's so much about like reaction and adrenaline and like, it's just like you have to act. There's a time frame and that window closes so quickly. And I feel like you can get into your head so much more because putting doesn't have that time frame. And I think that's a type of pressure that Ella, having experience with pressure in competitive sports, is going to have to learn to adapt to. Because there were times, and we talked a little bit about this off air, that Ella would walk up to some of those putts and you just felt she's not going to make this putt. She does not look like she can make this putt. And that's a kind of pressure that I think Ella is going to have to reckon with if she's ever going to win her Elite Series win.
Yeah, I agree that there's not a parallel in Ultimate, but I don't think there's a parallel in Ultimate for like throwing off the tee either. There's a special kind of pressure for solo individual sports where, when you're on an island, you're on an island all the time. And I think that's why I have belief that Ella can get past those like putting yips, if you want to call them that, because we have seen her, become just one of the, a phenomenal thrower off the tee.
Yes.
And that has an individual pressure too. I agree that like for most players, you're probably experiencing that, ramped up on a putt. But ultimately, like a putt is the same number of shots as a tee shot, right? So I don't see any reason why she can't tackle that mental hurdle just because there isn't a parallel in Ultimate,
I think it's a good point. All right, my last overreaction. I think this is actually the most bullish overreaction I've got in my repertoire, so definitely here for this one. Catrina, Paige, and Kristen are going to account for 18 of the 21 Elite Series or Major wins this season.
Wow.
Look, like... If Catrina can play like this, and I know she plays well LVC every year, but the putting was on point. She opened up a lead so far above, and I think you just said this so well, that there was nobody there who really felt like they were going to force Catrina to win it, right? Even when it got close, those tier 2 players who are excellent players, Missy Gannon, Ella Hansen, Haley King, Holland Handley, Hannah Blomroos, all of them, right? All are excellent players in their own right, but none of them have complete games. And you can pick and identify each and every one of them and say, here's where their deficiency lies. And the only 3 players on tour where that is not the case, and this is not true of Catrina 2 years ago. This is Catrina of today and now, is that Catrina, Paige, and Kristen just have such a complete game. And I know the knock on Paige a little bit is like the forehand, but I'm going to say those 3, I think, just have the most complete game of anybody in the FPO division. And it's why we got so hyped around Valerie Mondahano last season, because she came with that, what felt like the complete picture. But Catrina, Paige, and Kristen are on another level, and I'm saying they win 18 of the 21 Elite Series and Majors. Now, Josh, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, so I'll try to buy you some time, but is there any way we can pull how many they won? Those 3 won last year. Yes, I will pull those up. For like I off the top of my head, I know they won a lot, but 18 feels like a very, very big number. And we also know that you have Holland as winning the 19th of 21. So that's only 2 other winners are this year for Josh. All right, so we had LVC and Texas States Champions Cup, Jonesboro, DDO, OTB. Let's see. Portland went to Valerie Mondahano. Valerie's going to be like, that she was last season, kind of the big foil there. Preserve makes 7. U.S. Women's went to Haley. Idlewild Catrina makes 8. European Open. D-Glow goes to Natalie Ryan. So we're at 9 so far. Missy takes Ledgestone. Kristen DMC for 10. Kristen gets Worlds for 11. Kristen gets GMC for 12. What a stretch. MVP Open goes to Natalie Ryan, and then Tour Championship 13. So 13 of the events last season went to that grouping, though there are a couple extra events this season, like Sula was not one. I think there are a few more events this season than there were last. But 13 is the answer. Valerie Mondahano had 2 or 3. She had Waco, and then she had the one later at Portland, I think. Portland. So Valerie had 2, and Natalie Ryan had 2. Yeah. And that's where 4 of them went, and that's other than Haley King. There you go. And Missy. So Haley and Missy had 1. Valerie and Natalie had 2 each. But after that, it was Kristen, Paige, Catrina. So that's it's definitely more bullish than what it was last season. But I think it's a very real possibility. So. Yeah. It is. It'll come down to how many tournaments they all play. I think that's true as well. Like I'm a little worried about Paige's participation. I haven't we looked before the show, couldn't find an exact schedule for her. Kristen will
miss a chunk or two as well. So I think that's the question mark. If it's not out of the realm of possibility, though, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
I will say.
All right. Do you have a last overreaction for us?
I do. One more.
Okay.
It's similar to my last one, but on MPO side, Anthony Barella takes down his first Elite Series this year.
See, you have a listener who also said, and I quote, guaranteed Anthony Barella wins an Elite Series this season. And I was very critical of that guarantee, and I still stand by.
I would never guarantee it.
One. Is this even an overreaction then? If you're not going to guarantee something,
I think yes, because I think you kind of took the other side of it, right? Like, you thought his final round was evidence of Anthony Barella being more of the same. That, when it comes down to brass tacks, he isn't able to have the clean round he needs to even really be competitive down the stretch, like be in contention down the stretch, after, 3 pretty phenomenal rounds of golf. But the putting looks a lot better. And again, I think if he just avoids like that one, just really, or two really bad breaks in the final 9, I think he probably plays the back 9 completely differently. I think that kind of shook him a little bit, took him to a frustrated place. I think it's hard to really fault him for that. I think he showed me that he has taken the strides I think people have hoped that he would take this year, that he's able to dedicate more time to being a full-time disc golfer.
Yeah. Well, awesome. There is our overreactions for LVC. Let us know in the Discord or emails what you think we got right, what you think is just way outlandish and we shouldn't even be going at, or there's some areas we think we missed. The final thing that we want to do on today's podcast. Now, this is late news in a lot of ways. If you're a subscriber, you know that we did a rapid reacts after after All Stars, and most of that show was dedicated to the news around Gannon Buhr. We have not since had a show. Charlie and I pre-recorded last week's episodes, and man, was it a poor time to pre-record them. But Charlie out of the country, so we had those pre-recorded shows already. We did talk about it. If you want to go have the opportunity to hear kind of our first reactions, make sure to become a subscriber. Go catch all our rapid reacts. Those are recorded and put into your feed, so you can listen to that. But we do want to take the time to cover that a little bit on the main show as well. So for those of you who have been under a rock for the past 2 weeks, I really don't know how you can miss this and still be a fan of disc golf and doing both. Prodigy is suing Gannon Buhr for a breach of contract. And now a lot of what I'm about to say is going to be a reference from the Ultiworld article. This was written by Charlie and Chris Wickland. So make sure to check out this article. Is fantastic. Mm-hmm. They are alleging a breach of contract. Remember Gannon announcing that he would not be competing for Prodigy this year. And then Gannon is saying that there are 5, sent an email to Prodigy saying that there were 5 items that he constituted a material breach in the contract. He didn't get a Rookie of the Year commemorative disc when they said he would. He didn't receive regular sales reports to verify royalty payments. He didn't get to select his signature disc and was promised 2, but only received 1. He says that Prodigy's disc quality is poor and the molds are inconsistent, due to flashing being the primary concern. And there's actually, if you go a little bit further in the court filings, he says that he was given several boxes of discs to sell and he took out like 70% of them because he didn't feel comfortable selling them with the level of flashing that they had out of the factory. So that's number 4. And then number 5 is that he was owed $500 in unpaid bonuses. He then says that Prodigy did not cure the alleged breaches within the 30-day period and then moved to terminate the contract. So Prodigy is putting an injunction to try and stop him from competing under a competitor's name. It's noteworthy that at LVC, Gannon was throwing Prodigy. He was wearing his Prodigy gear. So at the very least, he's still wearing it now. A lot of this is in the article and you can go read this. I imagine most of the listeners here have already read it at this point. But Dan, we haven't had the chance to have you talk a little bit about this. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and, what you've been seeing a little bit, not quite from the outside looking in, but you describe yourself really as a fan, first, then media. So where has been your perspective on this and following this kind of story?
Well, first of all, I certainly am not a legal expert, so I think that might be kind of interesting if you guys get a legal. I've seen a lot of people that claim to be legal people like weigh in on it, but
Yeah, the Reddit lawyers.
Yeah.
No, Charlie read some notes from a legal expert that he consulted, who's a litigation attorney. And so, if you didn't listen, like I said, go listen to that live show if you haven't yet, because we talk about it there. And Charlie does read a couple notes from, some actual legal counsel. But, as a fan, Dan, like, where is your perspective on this matter?
As a fan, it seems like that probably nothing that Gannon said was a breach of contract that wasn't fixed within the cure period was actually a breach of contract. It seemed like a lot of stuff that was like promised via word of mouth and then, wasn't followed through on. That was how I read it. So I'm really curious to see how it plays out legally. I wouldn't be surprised if like Gannon doesn't win, but I think he's already won in the court of perception. I think anyone. And I saw in the Discord a lot of people like, I've never felt a Prodigy disc. The flashing thing is extremely real. Yeah, like it is a big problem with Prodigy discs. Like I said, I work at a disc golf shop, so I do think I offer like a pretty decent insight here. Prodigy, pretty big brand name with a lot of big name players, and it does not sell in our shop. Straight up. Like there are like a couple people who love it and it's like all they throw. But the flashing thing is very real. They feel awful all the time. So I am not surprised that Gannon has had that complaint. And to me, it feels like a massive mistake on Prodigy's end to make this such a public thing. I think obviously they were hoping it wouldn't. But some good sleuthing found the public records for it. But I mean, amplifying that complaint about your product is a really bad look in my opinion. Going so rigorously after Gannon Buhr, who is still, I believe, a minor, right? Pretty bad look for Prodigy. All of this just looks really, really bad for Prodigy. Even if they win the court case, it's really hard to see them coming back from it, in terms of public perception, in my opinion.
There's a couple of things that I think have heightened this problem in the public perception, that you've talked about here. Number one is that Prodigy has stated that Prodigy said in their court filing that Gannon leaving would leave Prodigy without any top level competitors in professional disc golf. And, Kevin just finished second. It's like, man, that's gotta feel terrible for Kevin. Like
for any of the players on their team,
any of their players, right? Isaac Robinson and Kevin, and yes, I agree. So those are the two that just initially come to mind. But that's not gonna feel good. And then Drew Gibson and a couple other people on social media. I have no verification of this, but there are people on social media who are saying that Prodigy tried to use some legal maneuvers, and I think we kind of speculated on this when Chris Dickerson left. And so it's kind of this repeat pattern for Prodigy that I think is just now really tarnishing them in the public eye. But on the other side of this, right? So you have the court of public opinion. I think, and what I've seen a lot of people who say, some of the notes in the article say the same thing. It's very likely that this is settled outside of court. Right. Prodigy doesn't want this to go to trial. I doubt Gannon wants this to go to trial.
There's no way.
Right. Does. No one wants this to go to trial, but I think there's a really good chance that a lot of players that this is settled in some way outside of court. But I remember I saw somebody comment, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this comment in particular. Prodigy is the first to do it, and every disc golf manufacturer is now grateful that Prodigy has done it because now contract enforcement is a real deal in the world of disc golf. What are your thoughts on that?
So this is where I wish I was more of a legal expert, right?
Okay.
Like it did always feel really weird to me, like especially the Ricky one, where and I think there were rumors that Innova was looking at legal ramifications with how that all went down, right?
I haven't heard anything about that one, but
I think there were like rumors of it that
Sure.
they were behind the scenes seeing what they could do legally.
Yeah.
To me, I'm surprised we're at this point because I really thought that after that off season that pretty much every contract would have a more straightforward, cut and dried ending terms of service plan. So I'm really surprised to see it's been this messy. I would have thought that just about every contract would have immediately been updated, be like, hey, if you leave the contract, this is what it's going to cost you to us. And like, obviously this is maybe like a weird example because Gannon is straight up saying that Prodigy did not uphold their end of the contract, and therefore, Gannon's argument is like Prodigy effectively ended the contract, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a very extenuating circumstance. I think Prodigy probably is in a bad spot. This move kind of reeks of desperation to me. I can't see other companies trying to follow suit on this. Like I can definitely see companies, like we saw with Discmania, right? Like Discmania, very clean. They get the million and a half or whatever it was, $1 million, I think, right?
$1 million buyout. Yep.
Clean as day. They even have like a pretty amicable split after all that.
Yeah.
To me, I think that is more of what you'll see going forward when players terminate contracts. Is the company that they're signing with is going to buy out that contract. I really don't think that this will become the norm with other companies, bringing it to this level.
Well, and Dynamic Discs, we interviewed and talked to them after the Ricky signing, and they said that while they wouldn't give the exact terms of the contract, that he'd have to give back the bonus, the signing bonus in crypto. He would owe a buyout clause, and that there is a sum that would be owed by an early termination of that contract. So I think you're right that stronger contracts. I don't know though what Gannon's contract looked like because that was signed I think the year before the Ricky thing. And so,
I really would have thought that all of like every contract would be updated. Like that to me, and even honestly, it should happen when the Paul stuff went down. Like it's clear that disc golf is now in a new world of money and of contracts. It just players operating as mercenaries, who are out to get paid, get paid what they deserve to be paid. And I just really am surprised that there like every company out there wasn't trying to, update their contracts to avoid things like this. So I think that will probably be more of the reaction from other companies. Like, ooh, let's make sure we aren't a Prodigy ever. Let's make sure we're never, in this spot. Let's take care of everything that we need to on our end legally, preemptively.
Mm-hmm. So this is definitely a very dynamic story. This is going to continue to change. We're waiting to hear some more news there. The one other, though, that we just only have to mention, Natalie Ryan has also filed a complaint against the Disc Golf Pro Tour and the PDGA. And this is something that we kind of speculated was coming. Charlie and I did. And there's another article up here. This is Sam Mintz wrote this one on Ulti World Disc Golf. So make sure to go check that out if you haven't yet. This complaint says that it is a violation of her and is gender discrimination and her ability to compete in the FPO division. They have filed it in California under the California Unruh Civil Rights Act. Which perhaps prohibits businesses from discriminating against people on the basis of protected characteristics such as race, age, sex, and sexual orientation. The article also notes, and I'm quoting the article here, the state has some of the strongest legal protections for transgender people in the country. Look, I think there was a lot of like news and buzz around the Gannon was filing. That because it was how unexpected it was. This one is one that we've kind of been expecting to see for a while. According to the emails shared with Ultiworld, a lawyer representing the Disc Golf Pro Tour said the organization had offered to permit Natalie Ryan to play an MPO this year. But Natalie's attorney wrote back that the offer was insulting and tone deaf. She would be at the bottom. PDGA has declined, says they do not comment on pending litigation. And then Thousand Raid Productions also did not respond to a request for comment. She included OTB, the OTB Thousand Raid Productions, who put on the OTB Open, is a defendant in this suit. So I'm also not a legal expert and I don't have a lot to comment on this one, but I think that primarily the biggest thing that should be noted, we're looking at a case that could become case law for other sports, other instances in terms of transgender rights and protections in sports and other realms that is going to be very, I think, important to watch for both the disc golf world as well as for the sporting world in general. So we have the Gannon suit, the Natalie Ryan one as well, on both. And this one, again, filed in California primarily. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out.
For sure. Yeah, I am with you. I don't think there's really a whole lot to add. Just I think we kind of just have to wait to see how this one plays out. Good luck to Natalie. I think she's fighting the good fight in my opinion, and I wish her all the luck in the world.
Make sure to go check out Ulti World Disc Golf for both of these articles. That's all we've got for you today. Disc Golf is back. Dan, thanks for joining us for the first show. Dan will be with us again on Thursday. And so thanks for being an Ulti World, an Upshot listener. And if you are not a subscriber yet, remember you can do so for less than $4 a month. Catch our rapid reacts where we break down even more from LVC. And Disc Golf is back, and man, does it feel good.
It does feel good, Josh.
For Dan and Josh, that's all we've got for you today. We'll talk to you on Thursday.